Most people think mentally strong people are simply born different. They imagine they're fearless, that they never overthink, never doubt themselves, never feel anxious, never want to quit. They assume these people were given something special at birth. A stronger personality, a higher pain tolerance, a naturally positive mindset. But if that were true, then psychology would have very little to teach us. Because if mental strength were something you were born with, there would be no way to build it. Fortunately, that's not what research suggests. Mental strength isn't a personality trait. It's a collection of habits. Habits that slowly shape the way you think, the way you react, and ultimately the way you live your life. Think about it. No one wakes up one morning and suddenly becomes resilient. No one magically develops confidence overnight. No one suddenly becomes disciplined after years of procrastination. Every mentally strong person you admire became that way through thousands of small decisions. Decisions that by themselves didn't seem important. Choosing to wake up when they wanted to stay in bed, choosing to tell the truth when lying would have been easier, choosing to face uncomfortable situations instead of avoiding them, choosing to keep going after failure instead of giving up. None of those decisions looked life-changing in the moment, but together, they completely changed who that person became. That's because your brain is constantly adapting. Every decision you repeat strengthens certain neural pathways. Every habit you practice becomes easier, until eventually, it becomes automatic. Psychologists call this neuroplasticity. Your brain is constantly rewiring itself based on what you repeatedly do. Which means every day, whether you realize it or not, you're training your mind. The only question is, what are you training it to become? Are you training yourself to avoid discomfort or to embrace it? Are you training yourself to panic during problems or to remain calm? Are you training yourself to quit when things become difficult or to keep moving forward despite uncertainty? Because every repeated behavior slowly becomes part of your identity, and identity is powerful. Most people believe behavior follows identity. They think, I'm confident, so I act confidently. But psychologists have found something interesting. The opposite can also be true. Repeated behavior begins creating identity. Someone who exercises consistently begins seeing themselves as a healthy person. Someone who studies every day begins seeing themselves as someone who values learning. Someone who repeatedly keeps promises to themselves begins seeing themselves as dependable. Identity isn't something you discover. It's something you build, one action at a time. That's why mentally strong people don't wait until they feel strong. They act strong first, not by pretending, but by practicing behaviors that eventually create that identity. This is where the first habit begins. Habit number 1, they accept reality instead of fighting it. This sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest habits to develop. When something painful happens, most people spend enormous amounts of energy wishing reality were different. This shouldn't have happened. It's not fair. Why me? If only things were different. Those thoughts are understandable. But mentally strong people don't stay there because they understand something incredibly important. Reality doesn't change because we argue with it. Imagine standing in the middle of a storm, yelling at the rain, complaining that it shouldn't be raining. Does the weather change? Of course not. The storm continues. The only thing that changes is how exhausted you become. Life works the same way. There are situations you cannot control. People will disappoint you, plans will fail, you'll lose opportunities, you'll make mistakes, unexpected problems will appear. None of these things are optional. They're part of being human. The sooner you accept reality, the sooner you can begin changing it. Acceptance is not surrender. Acceptance simply means seeing reality clearly, without denial, without excuses, without pretending things are different than they actually are. Because you cannot solve a problem you refuse to acknowledge. This is why psychologists often say that awareness comes before change. You can't improve a weakness you won't admit exists. You can't fix a relationship if you deny the problems. You can't overcome bad habits if you constantly justify them. Acceptance isn't weakness. It's the first step towards strength. Habit number 2, they become comfortable being uncomfortable. Your brain loves comfort. It always has. Comfort requires less energy, less uncertainty, less risk. From an evolutionary perspective, that made perfect sense. Thousands of years ago, Taking unnecessary risks could cost someone their life. Today, that same survival system often keeps people trapped. It convinces them not to apply for the better job, not to start the business, not to approach someone they admire, not to learn a difficult skill, not because they can't, but because uncertainty feels dangerous. Your brain isn't trying to make you successful, it's trying to keep you safe. And sometimes, safety becomes the biggest obstacle to growth. Mentally strong people understand this. They stop interpreting discomfort as a warning sign. Instead, they begin seeing it as evidence that they're growing. Think about learning to ride a bicycle. Remember how uncomfortable it felt? You lost balance, you fell, you doubted yourself. If you had stopped because it felt uncomfortable, you never would have learned. The same principle applies to almost everything worthwhile. Confidence, leadership, public speaking, fitness, relationships, business. Every valuable skill begins with discomfort. The difference is that mentally strong people don't run from that feeling. They expect it. They welcome it. Because they understand that discomfort is often temporary, but growth lasts. Now ask yourself something. When was the last time you intentionally did something difficult? Something that challenged you? Something that made you nervous? If you can't remember, there's a chance your comfort zone has quietly become your prison. And comfort zones are strange places. Nothing terrible happens there, but nothing extraordinary happens there either. Habit number 3, they control their thoughts before their thoughts control them. Have you ever noticed how quickly your mind creates worst-case scenarios? You send a message, they don't reply. Your brain says, they're ignoring me. You make one mistake, your brain says, I'm a failure. Someone criticizes your work. Your brain says, I'm not good enough. Psychologists call these cognitive distortions. They're automatic thinking patterns that often exaggerate reality. The problem isn't having negative thoughts. Everyone has them. The problem is believing every thought your mind produces. Mentally strong people understand something incredibly powerful. Thoughts are not facts. Just because your mind says something doesn't make it true. Your brain predicts, assumes, guesses, imagines. It does this constantly. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's completely wrong. Imagine treating every passing thought as absolute truth. Life would become exhausting. You'd live inside fear, inside doubt, inside assumptions. Instead, mentally strong people learn to question their thinking. Instead of saying, I'm going to fail, they ask, what evidence do I actually have? Instead of thinking, everyone is judging me, they ask, how do I know that's true? This simple habit changes everything. Because once you begin questioning your thoughts, you stop becoming controlled by them. Your emotions become easier to regulate, your decisions become more rational, and your confidence begins growing from reality instead of fear. Your mind becomes a tool instead of a prison. And perhaps that's one of the greatest signs of mental strength. Not having fewer negative thoughts, but becoming less controlled by them. The people who become mentally strong aren't the ones who never hear that negative voice. They're the ones who refuse to let it make every decision. Because every time you challenge a limiting thought, you weaken it. And every time you act despite fear, you strengthen yourself. That's the power of repetition. And that brings us to the next habit. Habit number 4, they keep promises to themselves. Imagine making plans with your best friend. You promise you'll be there at 7 p.m. Then you don't show up. You promise again the next day, and once again, you don't show up. How long would it take before they stop trusting you? Probably not very long. Now ask yourself something. How many promises have you broken to yourself? I'll start on Monday. I'll wake up early tomorrow. I'll go to the gym. I'll stop procrastinating. I'll finally work on my goals. One missed promise doesn't seem important, neither does the second or the third. But eventually, your brain begins collecting evidence that your own words don't mean much. Without realizing it, you slowly lose trust in yourself. Psychologists often describe confidence as something that grows from experience. And one of the most important experiences is proving to yourself that you'll do what you said you would do. Confidence isn't built by positive thinking alone. It's built through evidence. Every kept promise becomes another piece of evidence that you're dependable. Every completed task becomes another reason to trust yourself. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is consistency. Habit number 5. They stop comparing their journey to everyone else's. Comparison feels natural, especially today. Every time you open social media, you're shown the highlights of someone else's life. The promotion, perfect relationship, the expensive car, the dream house, the million-dollar business. What you rarely see are the failures, the rejection, the sleepless nights, the anxiety, the sacrifices. Psychologists call this a comparison bias. Our brains compare our behind the scenes with everyone else's highlight reel, and it's one of the fastest ways to destroy motivation. Mentally strong people understand that comparison is often misleading. Someone else's success doesn't erase your progress. Someone else's chapter 20 shouldn't make you hate your chapter 2. Every person begins somewhere. Every expert was once a beginner. Every confident speaker once stumbled over their words. Every successful entrepreneur once had 0 customers. Progress becomes impossible when your eyes are constantly focused on someone else's path. Instead, mentally strong people compare themselves to one person, who they were yesterday, not last year, not 5 years ago, yesterday. Because real growth is measured in direction, not speed. Habit number 6. They learn to be alone without feeling lonely. One of the greatest strengths a person can develop is enjoying their own company. Many people fear being alone, not because solitude is painful, but because silence forces them to face their own thoughts. So they stay busy. They constantly seek distraction, music, television, social media, messages, noise, anything to avoid sitting quietly with themselves. But mentally strong people understand something different. Solitude creates clarity. It's during quiet moments that we begin understanding ourselves, our fears, our values, our dreams, our mistakes, our purpose. Without solitude, self-awareness becomes difficult. And without self-awareness, growth becomes almost impossible. Being alone doesn't mean isolating yourself. Humans need connection. But mentally strong people don't depend on constant validation from others. Their happiness isn't built entirely on external approval, because they've learned something incredibly valuable. If you cannot enjoy your own company, no amount of attention from other people will permanently fill that emptiness. Eventually, you have to become someone you enjoy spending time with, and that journey begins in silence. Now think back to everything we've talked about: accepting reality, choosing discomfort, questioning negative thoughts, keeping promises to yourself, avoiding comparison, learning to enjoy solitude. Notice something? None of these habits require extraordinary talent. None require exceptional intelligence. None require perfect circumstances. They're available to almost everyone. The difference is simple. Most people know these habits. Mentally strong people practice them. That's what separates knowledge from wisdom. Knowledge is knowing what to do. Wisdom is doing it consistently. Your future won't be shaped by what you know. It will be shaped by what you repeatedly do. Every choice is casting a vote. A vote for confidence or self-doubt, for discipline or procrastination, for courage or fear. No single decision will define your life, but thousands of small decisions will. One day you'll look back and realize your life wasn't changed by one giant moment. It was changed by ordinary days. Days when nobody was watching. Days when you chose discipline over excuses, growth over comfort, action over fear. Those ordinary days quietly created an extraordinary life. So don't wait until you feel mentally strong. Don't wait until you're fearless. Don't wait until everything feels perfect. Start now. Start with one promise you'll actually keep. One difficult conversation. One uncomfortable decision. One habit that moves you closer to the person you want to become. Because mental strength isn't built in a single breakthrough. It's built one decision, one challenge, and one day at a time. The strongest people aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who keep getting back up, again and again and again, until resilience becomes part of who they are. And maybe that's the greatest lesson of all. Mental strength isn't something you're born with. It's something you earn, every single day, one choice at a time. If this video helped you see mental strength from a different perspective, consider subscribing for more videos exploring the psychology behind human behavior, habits, and the hidden patterns of the mind. Because the more you understand your mind, the more power you have to change your life.